Hello YouTube, this is DVD Review Studios here, and today I'm going to be doing a Blu-ray and DVD update for February 2019. Which this is the first update for the channel for this year, and this year I'm going to try and cut these videos back in length a little bit and make them more frequent back to the bi-monthly schedule, since I think I only posted 3 update videos last year and they were all ranging towards 40 minutes in length, which is kind of outrageous when you think about it. So I'm going to try and go back to the old formula this year for update videos. Anyway, first up for the Blu-rays, we have Incredibles 2, the very highly anticipated sequel to the original Incredibles movie. And was this worth the nearly 14-year wait? I definitely think so. It's a very enjoyable and very entertaining sequel at that, and overall I think the motivations, especially revolving around the character of Elastigirl, relating to the predominant story of re-legalizing superheroes, I thought this was a very well executed concept. And overall was very entertaining, made for a very hilarious film. Of course, it's great to see the Parr family back in action, especially Jack, since he now has a whole variety of superpowers, which is crazy. I definitely felt sorry for that poor raccoon. And the only real fundamental issue I have with this movie is the villain, Screenslaver, which in terms of his establishment, he's quite an eerie, quite creepy villain, and I thought it was very interesting, especially the monologue scene where Elastigirl is tracking his location, and the scene that follows onward from that is very eerie, especially the fight scene where he basically goes at Elastigirl with a cattle prod and an axe. That was crazy stuff, and overall was a great segment, especially with the score from Michael Giacchino. It was very fitting, and the sound effects in that scene were very good, especially the bizarre sort of breathing mask that he has. I thought was quite creative, but yeah, the main issue with that character is the plot twist involving the character, which is a shame because it does diminish his whole setup relating to screen media entertainment consumption, if that makes sense. Basically, Screenslaver, he is very much against screens and thinks that they basically control people. So what does he do? He controls people by hypnotizing them with screens, which is genius. But yeah, sadly, it does diminish his character, the plot twist, which I won't reveal. It's quite a recent film, so I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But yeah, I was quite disappointed by that. But other than that, it's a very entertaining film. It's great to see characters like Edna Mode and Frozone back on the big screen, and hopefully there will be an Incredibles 3. We don't really know what's happened to the Underminer, but I don't really think he's a villain worthy of carrying a full film, but we'll see what happens. Keeping the theme of Pixar, we have the short film compilation collections. This is volume 1. Which has this very nice looking slipcover, and the only reason I grabbed these is some of the shorts I'm missing from my DVD and Blu-ray sets, unfortunately, especially some of the earlier DVD releases that I have of some of the more original Pixar films. One of the ones that was notably missing was Knick Knack, which I believe came out with Finding Nemo, if I'm not mistaken, so I really wanted to have that on DVD or Blu-ray. I was lucky enough to grab this, I think for only £1 in CEX, which is a pretty decent buy. And it actually came with a slipcover, to my surprise, which is in really clean condition. And yeah, that was one of my personal favourite short films. I thought that was quite bittersweet, especially the ending, if you're familiar with that short. Jerry's Game was very good, quite a memorable one. Jack Attack is very funny. And yeah, so it's just great to have all the short films available on one disc. And you can just hit play all and enjoy them in their fullest. And here is Volume 2, which has a couple of shorts that, to be honest, I've actually never seen before. One of them, which I thought was great, was Presto, featuring the magician and his very hungry rabbit, who would not perform unless he was fed, and the magician just did not understand that. And that had some very creative animation. I thought that was really good stuff. And another good one that I quite liked was Day and Night, featured here on the side, and Bernie was very good as well. So yeah, great to have these little compilation sets of the Pixar shorts. So that is those. Next up we have Spielberg's Ready Player One, which is a movie I was interested in seeing in the cinema, sadly did not get round to doing so, and to be honest, I'm kind of glad that I didn't go to see this in the cinema. This is what I would interpret as the movie adaptation of a headache. There's a lot going on with this movie in terms of the CGI and the many Easter eggs and references they throw in on screen on purpose. so then you can basically waste your life watching this multiple times, I suppose, to point everything out. In comparison to the original source material by Ernest Cline, they've changed a lot of things to suit the big screen for a more entertaining thrill ride, which is basically what they've gone for, especially with the end battle, which I thought was very well done actually, and I really enjoyed the race car sequence involving the DeLorean drove by Parzival. That was very well done in terms of the CGI and the overall creativity behind that. But yeah, they translated the novel into movie form, as in writing literally a screenplay, word for word of the book. That would probably have been the most boring movie in history, but it works very well as a book. But yeah, I suppose they've made very essential changes. It's just a lot of what this movie contains I felt to be very rushed and very unnecessary in a couple of areas, but aside from that, it's an interesting CGI thrill ride. It's something I compare to the likes of, say, Valerian. But yeah, it's an okay movie, definitely not one of Spielberg's best, but it was overall quite entertaining for what it was. Next up we have WreckIt Ralph, which I did previously show off in an update video. I just had not watched it at the time, and so therefore could not talk about it. But I watched it a couple of nights ago, and I really enjoyed this movie. I'm very excited to check out the sequel when it comes out on DVD and Blu-ray, and this film was overall quite heartwarming. Ralph, the villain that no longer wants to be a villain in the game Fix-It Felix, and so in search of a medal, he basically goes on this very entertaining quest and runs into a load of video game characters that I thought were hilarious in their own rights, in particular Vanellope, and Ralph ends up saving Vanellope's game from the supposed evil King Candy. I won't go any further than that because the spoiler sort of twist involving King Candy as a character I thought was really well executed, and overall this film was hilarious. Great video game references throughout. I loved Cubert's minor appearances, and yeah, overall very good stuff. So that is WreckIt Ralph. And finally for the Blu-rays we have the '08 Hulk starring Ed Norton. And this movie I hadn't watched in years, and rewatching it on Blu-ray, it really has rekindled my love for the film, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would have. The film in itself is kind of basic in its plot, but overall it's quite entertaining, especially for obviously the Hulk aspects and Bruce Banner trying to figure out how to either stop or control the Hulk mode as it would be. And yeah, the film in itself was very entertaining. I loved the end fight, and overall, quite an entertaining film for what it is. So I really did enjoy rewatching this movie. It has gone up a lot in my overall estimation, and it really does make me consider what could have been. Imagine seeing Ed Norton in films like Avengers Assemble and Age of Ultron, just to see that chemistry with the other characters that we had established. That would have been great, especially to see Ed Norton interacting with Robert Downey Jr. I reckon their characters would have had some really good chemistry in Age of Ultron. But anyway, let's move on to the DVDs. Moving on to the DVDs, first up we have both Season 1 and Season 2 of Parks and Recreation, a show that I've been recommended to watch multiple times and I've just never had the chance to get into. It's been compared to the likes of The US Office, which is a sitcom I very much enjoyed, and so far so good. I'm really enjoying this series. I'm currently on disc 2 of Season 2, and I was actually warned off watching Season 1 in its entirety. It's only 6 episodes compared to 24 on Season 2, but this was supposed to be incredibly slow and didn't really do the characters justice in terms of their overall introduction. And apparently the plot was quite repetitive, which I do definitely agree with. The whole plot concerning the huge dugout pit that Rashida Jones's character of Anne wants to have turned into a park with the help of Amy Poehler's character of Leslie Knope. That got old very quickly, and thankfully in Season 2 they seem to have moved away from that, which I'm hoping they have, since that was overall really repetitive and unfunny towards the end. But other than that, I thought this was okay. I've seen a lot worse of television, and for only 6 episodes, I got through it. And I've had this in the collection for quite a while. I don't know whether or not I've shown this in an update video or not, but you'll probably find it in my DVD collection overview from last year. And season 2, it's a 4-disc set, and I'm really enjoying this so far. If you would like to check out the show, so far I'd recommend it. I've only seen maybe 16 episodes so far, and I am really enjoying it. It revolves around a government of public servant workers, and basically they are trying to make the world a better place, one park at a time. And I think it's Pawnee, Indiana the show is set in. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, so like I said, so far so good. I'm loving the characters, especially Ron Swanson. And my favourite episode so far is where Leslie goes on a date with that police officer guy and makes a huge mountain out of nothing. And the comedy in that episode is fantastic, especially the one-liners. So yeah, that's Parks and Recreation. Next up we have Robot Chicken Star Wars Free, which I was very harsh a couple of years ago on the first 2 Robot Chicken Star Wars movies, and I rewatched them not long ago and I really enjoyed them, and so I thought I'd pick up the third one, and this is funnily enough an hour long, a lot longer than the others. To my amazement, and there's some really good gags in this one, so this was a very enjoyable short, and I enjoyed that so much I thought I'd give the actual Robot Chicken show a go, since the episodes are only like 11 minutes long anyway, and I've seen the majority of them through YouTube clips, and I have liked a lot of what I've seen of Robot Chicken, and I do really appreciate the stop motion animation style. And the only unfortunate thing about this DVD set that I got, it's missing the slipcover, which I actually got a refund on. I complained about it thinking I'd get some money off, or maybe even just another copy sent when I could get the slipcover, but the seller was really apologetic about it over eBay and just refunded me my money immediately, which was really strange. But yeah, so I haven't checked out all of this as of yet. I've seen a couple of episodes and I like what I've seen so far, so that is Robot Chicken Season 1. Next up we have some classic animation with the complete first season of the Jetsons, and Season 2, Volume 1 of the Jetsons as well. Which the Jetsons, if you've never heard of it, it's a classic Hanna-Barbera animation from I think the late 60s if I'm not mistaken, maybe early 60s actually. But this was basically, in a sense, the opposite of the Flintstones, which it's set in the future where we have robot maids, talking dogs, and it's just overall a laugh a minute. I love these sitcoms. Great animation, great stories, very original in the overall prospects surrounding these shows, and I always find the voice acting to be quite humble and overall very entertaining. So I've watched all of this season. It's 3 discs and was overall very enjoyable, and I've just recently moved on to Season 2, Volume 1. There is Volume 2, which was sadly released on a DVD-R disc with the purple hue on the back, which I haven't picked up as of yet, since everywhere it's like £30, which is insane. But this is, I think, 21 episodes long. The entirety of Season 2 was, I think, 42 episodes in total, so they split it in half. And yeah, I'm looking forward to checking this out. I really enjoyed Season 1. I love these characters, especially Elroy, which has some very sort of hilarious wisecrack one-liners throughout. And yeah, so that is the Jetsons. Next up we have Good Will Hunting, starring Robin Williams and Matt Damon. I believe this was actually one of the first movies to star Matt Damon, if not the first. And this movie I had never actually seen before. I've seen various scenes from it played out in other TV shows and such as the It's Not Your Fault scene, for example, which I think was featured in Family Guy or American Dad. I can't quite remember, but this movie overall, I wish I'd seen this a lot sooner. It's a very evocative tale, and focuses on the character of Will Hunting, who is a very complicated person who gains recognition at his job of being a janitor at a university for being able to solve very difficult math problems. And after being taken under the wing of one of the math professors, Will Hunting is just a very awkward person to work with, and someone who finds it very difficult to connect with other human beings, especially in intimate relationships as an example, and the only person who can really seem to get some sort of connection going with him is Robin Williams' character of Sean. And the performance and overall chemistry together throughout this movie is breathtaking. Just overall phenomenal film, definitely worthy of the 2 Oscar wins, and was overall a glorious tale and a film that I definitely recommend to anybody. Just overall very exciting and quite chilling in some areas as well. So that is Good Will Hunting. Next up we have Being John Malkovich, a movie by Spike Jonze, and this is quite possibly one of the strangest movies I've seen in a very long time. It stars John Cusack, Cameron Diaz, Catherine Keener, and of course John Malkovich. This movie is beyond strange. To put it in terms, it's really more of an experience, a very trippy one at that, than it is overall an enjoyable film as such. It's a movie that I definitely think is worth rewatching. I've seen this twice now. And the film in itself has some very unexplained, overall very inexplicable moments that you kind of just go with as the movie progresses, such as John Cusack's character. He's a puppeteer, an unsuccessful one at that. Cameron Diaz's character of Lottie encourages John Cusack's character to get a job, and with his fast hands being a puppeteer, he gets a job in filing on the 7th floor of a very huge corporate building. Not the 7th floor, not the 8th floor. The 7th, where the ceilings are incredibly low, no one can really understand each other, and then suddenly one day, John Cusack's character discovers a portal behind the filing cabinet into the mind of John Malkovich. And if you enter that portal, you can be John Malkovich for 15 minutes and watch things from his perspective. From there, this movie is insane. I don't even think I've done it justice by briefly explaining the entire concept, but I would 100% recommend this movie. It is by far one of the most deranged experiences I've had in recent years watching a movie, and I overall really enjoyed it. Very psychological, definitely a movie that sparks a lot of questions, philosophical ones at that for sure. And yeah, Being John Malkovich is a very interesting movie for sure, so I definitely recommend checking it out. Next up we have Stranger Than Fiction, starring Will Ferrell. This was overall quite an entertaining movie. It's not a movie I'd necessarily watch again, but I thought this was quite provocative in terms of the questions it asks, similarly to how Being John Malkovich is quite a philosophical film. We have the most generic man in America working for the IRS, and then suddenly one day he wakes up and his entire life is being narrated by an anonymous woman who is, funnily enough, writing a novel about him as a character. Only it turns out the character that she's writing about does exist in real life and is a real person. And that really does add some very fundamental questions to the meaning of life and life expectancy, to say the least. And I thought this was quite entertaining for that purpose alone. Kind of thought the scenes involving Maggie Gyllenhaal's character were a little bit overdone and just kind of unnecessary, to be honest. It kind of just gave a little bit more humanoid backstory to Will Ferrell's character and just made him less of a robot, I suppose. But yeah, I definitely recommend checking out Stranger Than Fiction. It was overall quite an interesting watch. Next up we have Sorted, which revolves around the London club scene of the early 2000s. And this was overall quite interesting for the murder mystery that was launched into the equation. The sad thing is that the murder mystery was very predictable. Obviously, I won't spoil what happens, but if you're interested in watching the movie, then by all means do so. Just prepare to be a little bit disappointed, I suppose. But Tim Curry portrayed a really creepy character in this movie, and Matthew Rhys, the main protagonist of Carl, his character was quite interesting, and yeah, other than that, there's not really much going for this movie. I thought it was okay. The music was really the only sort of engulfing thing I found to be quite interesting about it. Cinematography matched a lot of the music, especially in the sort of raving scenes. But yeah, other than that, not really much going on with this film, so not really something I'd recommend. So that is Sorted. Next up we have The Usual Suspects, which I did feature in an update video not too long ago, and I hadn't seen the movie at that point in time, and I've watched this twice now. I watched it a few days ago, which reminded me to include it in a video, so I'm throwing this in here now. And the movie in itself I thought was okay. Watching it twice, I think that's really all the satisfaction you need from it. The first time it's quite good to see the build towards the plot twist, and then watching it again, I think it's good to see the reverse of that, seeing the sort of bullshit elements of Kevin Spacey's character's story, and then obviously that leads into the very miraculous plot twist towards the end. And yeah, for a thriller from Bryan Singer, I thought this was quite adequate enough. Directing style was very enjoyable, and yeah, definitely a good story. I'd definitely recommend checking it out. Next up we have David Fincher's movie Seven, revolving around the 7 deadly sins, starring Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. I remember watching this movie years and years ago and finding the ending really unsatisfactory. Obviously, if you've seen the film, you'll know what I'm talking about, the what's in the box scene. And yeah, watching it now, I enjoyed that a lot more. I loved the way they left the ending, and I was reading up on it, and I think it was both Freeman and Pitt that insisted the ending stay like that, since people were arguing otherwise before the film's release. And yeah, absolutely stunning film, would highly recommend it. One of Finch's best, in my opinion, up there with Fight Club for sure. And the last four movies I have to show, I actually haven't seen any of. We have a couple of bad comedies, as I like to call them, starring James Franco and the gang. The Interview, which I haven't watched, but it had a lot of controversy surrounding it a couple of years ago when it was relevant. Which the film, as far as I'm aware, is basically just focusing on the assassination of the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, which obviously you can see why that would be controversial. So I'm interested to check this out. Supposedly it is actually a decent comedy, but we shall see. Next up is Ben Stiller in the Zoolander, which I've never really had any interest in. A friend gave me this movie to check out, and I'll get round to it at some point. Supposedly the sequel was absolutely unwatchable, so I'm kind of more interested in seeing why that is unwatchable. So maybe I'll subdue myself to that kind of torture at some point in the near future. So that is Zoolander, haven't watched it yet. Tom Cruise in Jerry Maguire, a movie that I read the synopsis of and thought that sounded really interesting. And I'm not really a big Tom Cruise fan, as long-time viewers of the channel will already know. But I'll give this a shot and see what I think of it. So that is Jerry Maguire. And finally we have Birdman, which I honestly only bought because it stars both Michael Keaton and Ed Norton. And again, I haven't watched this as of yet, but supposedly there's some decent trickery going on with the cinematography, which I'm intrigued about. So I'll probably throw this in a future update if I like it enough to talk about it. So that is Birdman. So thanks for watching my Blu-ray and DVD update for February 2019. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then be sure to leave a like down below. Let me know in the comments any of your thoughts on any of the titles I've shown in this video, or if you would like to hear more in-depth thoughts on anything I have shown in this video, leave a comment and request a review and I shall get to it at some points. So thanks for watching, and more videos coming soon.